Alright guys, today I'm going to go over the last part of the area perimeter Pythagorean theorem worksheet. Remember, this is going to be, all of this is going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we're just going to solve everything like that. So remember, what we're going to find out is c is always across from the right angle. So I know right here that this is going to be C. The good news is I can call A and B whatever I want. So I'm going to say 4 is A, and I'm going to say that 5 is B. So I'm going to have 4 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. So 4 squared is 16 plus 25 equals c squared. So I do 16 plus 25, so just put that in my calculator. 16 plus 25, if you need the calculator, use that. Get 41. So c squared equals the square root of 41. Now I'm just going to put in my calculator, square root of 41. I told you guys can give me decimal answers. So 6.4. So c is about 6.4. So I use the approximate symbol, 6.4 meters. All right. That's it. 2, exact same concept. C is 16. A is 9. We will say that B is X. So I'm going to have 9 squared plus B squared. We don't know B squared. We can call it X. So X squared equals 16 squared. So once we do this, once we do the first part, we have 81 plus x squared equals 16 squared is 256. So now this is just a solve problem. We have to minus 81 from both sides. So we have to minus 81 from both sides. So I'm minus 81. I end up with x squared equals, I just do 256 minus 81. I end up with 175. Now what we talked about in class is to get rid of this little 2, I have to square root both sides. So x equals the square root of 175, and I told you guys you could use the decimal approximation. So you just put the square root of 175 in the calculator, you end up with 3.2, we'll go 23. So it's about 13.23, which means my B is going to be about 13.23 feet. And that's it. Done. So I'm going to go over to 3 now. It's the exact same concept. So 3, I have A squared. I'm sorry. Just A. B is right here. C is X. Remember, C is always across from 90. So you always find C first if you're struggling. So in my calculator, or not my calculator, I'm going to write down the square root of radical 5 squared plus, remember B is actually the same thing, the square root, radical 5 squared equals C squared. Now the good news is this is pretty easy because when I square a square root, those numbers cancel each other out. So I'm left with just 5 plus 5 because those cancel each other out. And you can put in your calculator just like that too, and it'll give you 5 equals c squared. So that means 10 equals c squared. And remember, to get rid of the little 2, we have to square root both sides. So in my calculator, do the square root of 10. I end up with about 3.16. So c is about 3.16. So that means, remember, I'm going to use my label. C is about 3.16 meters. So there's my answer right there. All right, 4 I'm going to do 4 the exact same way I've been doing everything so far. Remember, we always identify C first. So I'm going to identify C first. C is always across from 90, so C is right here. It doesn't matter which one we call A. I can call X A. That means B is 5. So I'm going to have X squared plus 5 squared, because that's what B is, equals C is 9 squared. So I'm going to evaluate. I have X squared plus 25 equals 81. Now remember, we're basically solving like Algebra 1 solve schools. The geometry of this problem is over. So I just subtract 25 for both sides. So I do 81 minus 25. I end up with the square root of, or I end up with 56. So X squared equals 56. Now I can square root both sides. So X equals, into my calculator, just put the square root of 56. I end up with about 7.48. Now remember, it's an approximate symbol. So I'm going to put A equals is approximately 7.48 meters. All right, that's it. 5 and 6, exact same concept. So once again, I'm going to start with C. I always start with C first because C is the only one that really matters exactly where it's at. A and B can be flip-flopped and it's not going to change anything. So that means I'm going to call A 10, we'll call B X. So I have 10 squared plus X squared, because we don't know what B is, equals 12 squared, because we know what C is. So I have 100 plus X squared equals 144. I'm going to minus 100 from both sides. Remember, that's what we're going to, it's basically a solve problem. We have to get X by itself. So I have X squared equals 44. Now to get rid of this little 2, I have to square root both sides. That's what makes those 2 cancel. That's why we're left with just X. So X is approximately, I'm going to write that X a little bit better. I use the approximate symbol because I'm going to use my calculator around. So I say square root of 44 is about 6.63. So 6.63. So that means I'm going to go back. I'm going to say B is about 6.63 and the label is meters. Don't forget your label. All right. 6, I'm doing the exact same thing. So look, everything is exactly the same. There is C. C is 14. We'll say A is the X. We'll say B is the 11. It really does not matter there. You can flip-flop it any way you want. So I have X squared plus 11 squared equals 14 squared. So now I'm just going to evaluate X squared plus 121 equals 196. Now we're going to solve. So I'm going to minus 121 from both sides. I end up with X squared equals, I do 196 minus 121. I get 75. Now remember, how do I get rid of this little 2? Well, I square root both sides. So X is approximately, I'm going to do the square root of 75 in my calculator, 8.66. So 8.66. So that means I'm going to plug it back into the original. A is about 8.66, and this time it's yards. That's it. I'm going to go on 7, the exact same concept. So once again, 7, C is across from 90, so that's my 15. A we'll call X, B we will call 190 square root of 197. So I set it up. X squared plus, I'm going to put the square root of 197 squared equals 15 squared. Now I'm going to evaluate. So I have X squared. Remember, the square root of a square, or if you square a square root, they cancel each other out. So you're just left with 197 equals 225. So now, pretty easy. I'm minus 197 both sides. Remember, you have to get rid of the addition first. So I do 225 minus 197. I end up with 28. So X squared is 28. Remember, to get rid of the little 2, we square both sides. So x is about, and I just do the square root of 20 in my calculator, 5.29. So now I just go back to the beginning and I say A is about 5.29 and it is centimeters. All right. So now we're going to go on to number 8. I'm just moving everything over a little bit. So 8, I'm going to go through the exact same thing. Remember, C is across from 90, so we see is X this time. A we'll call 11, even though it doesn't matter. I could call that one B. B we'll call radical 17, even though, like I said, they can call that one A. So I end up with 11 squared plus the square root of radical 17 squared equals C squared. And we'll just say it's X. Now I evaluate. So I have 11 squared, which is 121, plus, remember, those two cancel. So it's just 17 equals x squared. So I have x squared. I just flip my equation around to make some people like it better this way. 138. Now to get rid of the little 2, I have to square root both sides. Remember, those cancel. So I have x. I'm going to do the second square root on my calculator, 138. I end up with about 11.75. So x is about 11.75. So I can look and see that is C. So C is about 11.75 in its feet. Right? 9, exact same concept. So C, that's the X. Remember, I always find C first. It's across from 90. So I'm going to call A radical 122. That means I'm going to call B 7. You could flip it either way. So I'm going to have for A, I'm going to say the square root of 122. I'm going to square that. It's A squared. Plus B is 7, so it's 7 squared. Equals, we don't know what C is. We call it X. Oh, X squared. Now I evaluate. Square root of 122 squared. Remember, those two cancel each other out, so it's 122 plus 49 equals X squared. In my calculator, I put in 122 plus 49. I get 171. Now I have to square root both sides, so I square root. X equals the square root of 171 on my calculator is about, so it's not equals, it's about 13.08. So it's about 13.08. And now I'm going to look and see, this is C. C is about 13.08, and it is inches. All right, last one on this page. So I have the square root of 10. I find C first. Remember, I find C, that's the square root of 11. Remember, that's across from 90. So then that means we'll call A X, and then we'll call B square root of 10. So now I'm going to just plug it in. So I'm going to have X squared plus, remember, it is the square root of 10 squared. If you're going to plug in your calculator, use the parentheses just like I did there. Equals square root of 11 squared. Now I'm going to evaluate. X squared plus 10 equals 11. I'm going to minus 10 from both sides. Remember, we're doing x by itself. So I have x squared equals 1. Now I square root both sides, because that's what makes the little 2 go away. So x equals 1. This one is not a round. It's exactly 1. So now I look over here, and I find out that A is, not approximately, is equal to 1 kilometer. That's it. That's it for this page. All right. This one says, next page says, find the area of each triangle. So you need, they're all right triangles. So you need to find the height, the base and the height. You're going to use Pythagorean theorem on every single one. So remember, I'm going to start with this one. We have 13. That is 18 is C. So that means A is 13. That means B, we don't know. We'll call B X. All right. So to start this, I'm going to say that 13 squared plus, we don't know it, x squared equals 18 squared. All right. So I have to do 13 squared, which is 169, plus, we don't know, x squared equals 324, 18 squared. I'm going to minus 169 from both sides. So I have x squared equals 324 minus 169 is 155. So now, to get rid of this little 2, I have to square root both sides. So I have the square root of 155 is about 12.45. So we're going to say b is about 12.45. So 12.45 is here. This is your base. Remember, this is your height. So the area for a triangle, the formula for a triangle is area equals 1/2 base times height. So to find my area, I'm going to do area is equal to 1/2. The base is 12.45 times my height, which is 13. So I do 1 ABC2 if I'm using my calculator, times, you can use the parentheses button if you're using mine, 12.45, close the parentheses, 13. I end up with about, so my area is about 80.93. Now I want you to put units squared. All right, that's it for 11. All right, so and 12, I need the height to find the area. All right, so I'm going to call that A. I'm going to call the B 9. I just like to use this 9 as the base, so then my B for Pythagorean's theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, is the same B for base, 1/2 base times height. You don't have to do that. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to start with, we don't know that, so we'll call it x squared plus 9 squared equals 10 squared. So now I have x squared plus 81 equals 100. I'm going to minus 81 from both sides. I end up with x squared equals 19. Now remember, to get rid of the little 2, you have to square root both sides. So my x, or my b, or my a, is approximately the square root of 19 is 4.36. So it's about 4.36. I went to the hundreds even though they said tenth. I like going a little bit further. Now, so that means I'm going to put 4.36 in there for A. That's my height. So to find my area, I do 1/2 my base, which is 9, times my height, which is 4.36. So I'm just going to do 1 ABC2 parentheses 9 close parentheses 4.36. I end up with about, area is about 19.62. So area is about 19.62. Remember, it's square units, so you have to have your label. All right. The keyword is baseball. The keyword is baseball. 13, exact same concept. I'm going to call 7A. I'm going to call C 13. And I'm going to say B is X. And that's then now it's the same base for my height and stuff. All right. So I'm going to say 7 squared plus x squared equals 13 squared. 7 squared is 49, so I have 49 plus x squared equals 169. So I'm going to subtract 49 from both sides. I'm going to have x squared equals 120. Now to find out my base, I'm going to square root both sides. So I'm going to say second square root of 120. I end up with about 10.95. So x is about 10.95. So that's my base. So to find my area, remember it's 1/2 the base, which is now about 10.95, times the height. So I'm just going to put my calculator, 1 ABC 2, parentheses, 10.95, close the parentheses, new set of parentheses, 7. I end up with area is about, and the reason it's about is because I rounded to get the 10.95, so it's about 38.33. And we're going to say, remember, it is square units. If they would have given me any other measurement, I would be using those units. The only reason I'm using square units is to signify I understand that units, the area is measured in square units, where length of a side is not measured in square units. So 14 is a little bit different because look, we need this height. All right. So what I'm going to do is I can do this because this is going to tie in some of our properties that we've discussed before. Because those are the same base, this is an isosceles triangle, I know that that's going to be 3.2, right? I know that this triangle is going to be 3.2 here, and this is going to be 3.2 here. Because it's an isosceles triangle, it's going to make two congruent triangles using side angle side. There's some theorems we can use for that. So basically, I know that's going to happen. Now I have it. It doesn't matter which triangle, the right triangle or the left triangle, we're going to be able to find the height. So I'm going to do the right triangle. So I'm going to say that this is my A. I lied to you. I'm going to say this is A. This is going to be my base, my B, and this is going to be C. So we don't know A, so I'm going to say x squared plus 3.2 squared sorry, I wrote it wrong color, equals 5 squared. So now I'm going to put my calculator, 3.2 squared, I end up with 10.24. So I have x squared plus 10.24 equals 25. Now remember, I'm going to subtract 10.24 from both sides. So I have x squared equals 14.67. I'm sorry, 76. Okay. And now I square both sides. So I do square root of 14.76. So I'm going to get about 3.84. That's the height. So this is the base. So my area formula is going to be area is equal to 1/2. The base is 6.4. The height is 3.84. Type in my calculator, 1 ABC 2. 6.4, 3.84. Remember, we did round earlier, so my area is about 12.28 or 12.29, and it's square units. Right. So now we're going to go to 15 and 16, exact same concept. So to find the area of the triangle, for this one, 15 is a little bit harder because to find the base, that's the base, right? I need this little piece right there. So I'm basically looking at the left triangle out of these two triangles. So this is going to be my C. We'll call 7A, and we'll call, this is b, even though it's not our entire base when I go to use my area formula. So I'm going to say 7 squared plus x squared equals 9 squared. So now I evaluate, I get 49 plus x squared equals 81. I do 81 minus 49, so I'm going to minus 49 from both sides. So I have x squared equals 32. And now I square root both sides. So I get x is about the square root of 32. 5.6, we'll say about 5.66. So this is 5.66, which makes the whole base equal to 12.66. That's the whole base. And my height is the 7, so this is my height. So to find the area of my triangle, area is equal to 1/2 the base, 12.66, times my height, 7. So I just type in my calculator, 1 ABC2 times 12.66 times 7, and I get my area is about 44.3. We're going to say square units. 16, exact same concept. All right, to find the entire base, we need to find this piece right here. And really, to find this piece right here, we need to know the height. So remember, we need this piece, height. We need the whole purple piece, base. Now I'm going to use the same idea we did earlier on number 14 to say that this is 3.8. All right, you would have to know some stuff about isosceles triangles to be able to do that. I do. So we already know the whole base, but we need to find the height. So the height, C is 9. We'll say that this is A, and we'll say that this is B. Now it's not the whole base; it's just half the base. But for the left triangle, it is B. All right. So I'm going to say x squared, because we don't know the height, plus 3.8 squared equals 9 squared. So I evaluate. I put 3.8 squared in my calculator. I end up with 14.44. Equals 81. Now I just subtract 14.44 from both sides. Remember, that's how we get rid of addition. I get x squared equals, I do 81 minus 14.44. I get 66.56. And now I have to square root both sides. So I square root both sides. Remember, that's how we get rid of the little 2. That's why I square root it. So I end up with x is about 8.16. Remember, that's my height. So my height is 8.16. So now to find my area, I say area is equal to 1/2 the base. 3.8 and 3.8 together is 7.6. That's my whole base. My height is 8.16. So I just do 1/2 1 ABC2 times 7.6 times 8.16. And remember, it's about, so my area is about, and it's be 31.01. Remember, it's square units. Don't forget your label. All right, that's it for 16. We got 4 more and then we're done. All right. So once again, 17 is going to use this idea of isosceles triangles. So I know that this piece right here is 3. I know this piece right here is 3. I got to find the height. So I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, guys. It's taking too long. So this is, we're going to call this A. We don't know it. We need to find it. We're going to say 3 is the b. We're going to say this is c. So I'm going to say x squared plus 3 squared equals 5 squared. So I get x squared plus 9 equals 25. I minus 9 from both sides. X squared is going to be equal to 25 minus 9 is 16. I square root both sides. So x is equal to 4. So my height is actually 4. So now my base, so I'm going to do area is equal to 1/2 the base, which is 6, times the height, which is 4. So 1/2 of 6 times 4, half of 24 is 12. And this one isn't equal because we did not round anywhere, so it's 12 square units. Now 9, once again, we use the same idea about isosceles triangles. So I know that's 5.2. So this one, remember, I got to find h, which is going to be, we can call it a in my triangle. So we'll say this is a. We'll use 5.2 as our b, even though it's not our entire base when I go to area. They are different b's. So I have area, I'm sorry, I have x squared, because we don't know a or h, plus 5.2 squared equals 9 squared. So I do 5.2 squared in my calculator. I end up with 27.04. So I have x squared plus 27.04 equals 81. Now remember, I'm going to minus 27.04 from both sides. So it's pretty much, we've done the same thing almost every single problem. Here, 53.96 is what I end up with. So I have x squared is equal to 53.96. Now to get rid of the little 2, I square root both sides. So x equals the square root of 53.96. And remember, we're going to round, so it's approximately 7.35. So I have my height is going to be now 7.35. So my area is 1/2. The base is 10.4 times my height, which is 7.35. So I just use my calculator. 1 ABC2 times 10.4 times 7.35 equals 38.22. Remember, it's about, because we rounded on our square root. Remember, it is square units. So because they didn't give us a label, we just say units square. All right. Last one, 19 and 20. Now 19 and 20 a little bit harder than all of the other ones because this is not an isosceles triangle, right? So not isosceles, which means I can't do my little cheat that I did over there like I did here to get 5.2. So I actually have to do the Pythagorean theorem twice. So I have to find this b, and then I have to find this b. So I have to find this b. To do both of those, to get the one base, to get the area of the big triangle. Or you could find the area of both triangles individually. It's really up to you. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with the left triangle. So I'm going to say we know a. So a is 6 squared. We don't know b, so I'm going to say plus x squared. We know c, that's c, is equal to 7 squared. So I'm going to have 36 plus x squared equals 49. Now I got a minus 36 from both sides. So I get x squared equals 13. So to get the square root of both sides, I have to get the x by itself at the square root of both sides. So I do the square root of 13, which is about 3.61. So x is about 3.61. So this guy right here is about 3.61. Now I got to do the whole thing again, this time for the right triangle. So this time a is still 6 squared. We still don't know what b is, so we're going to say x squared. And then c is going to be 9. So then I have 36 plus x squared equals 81. I minus 36 from both sides. So 81 minus 36 is 45. X squared equals 45. Now, to get rid of the little 2, I square root both sides. So I have x equals the square root of 45 is 6.71, and it's about. So my b here is 6.71. So to find my total base, I add both of them together. So I'm going to find the area of the big triangle, so I'm only do area once. So area is equal to 1/2. My base is going to be 3.61 plus 6.71. That's 10.32. My height is 6. So this together is 10.32. So I do 1 ABC2 times 10.32 times 6. I end up with about 30.96. So my area is about 30.96 square units. All right. I'm going to do the exact same thing on 20. So I'm going to do left triangle, right triangle. So I'm going to do the left triangle first. Right? And I have to do the left triangle first because I have to find this height. So I have to find this first. Then I can use the right triangle, Pythagorean's theorem, to find the missing base. So we're going to start off with that. So we're going to say this is A. So I'm going to say x squared. We'll call this guy B right here. So 8 squared equals, we'll call this guy C, 14 squared. So I evaluate, I have x squared plus 64 equals 196. I'm going to minus 64 from both sides, so I do 196 minus 64. I end up with 132. So I minus 64, minus 64. I get x squared equals 132. Remember, I'm going to square both sides. So I have the square root of 132. I end up with about 11.49. So x is about 11.49. So this is 11.49 for my height. Now for my right triangle, I can use that new height. I can use C to find the missing base. So we'll call that A. We'll call the missing base right here B. And we'll use C as 18. So I'm going to say 11.49 squared plus x squared, because we don't know it, equals 18 squared. And I just go through and I do everything like I've done before. 11.49 squared is 132. We're going to say 132 point 132.0201 plus x squared equals 324. Now I'm going to subtract 132.0201. So I'm going to minus 132.0201 from both sides. I end up with x squared equals 191.9799. If you rounded that, that's fine too. I just didn't. It's not really a big deal either way. Square both sides. So second square root 191.9799. I end up with about, we'll say 13.86. So this is 13.86 about. Now I'm going to add that to 8. So my entire base is going to be this. So I'm going to do 8 plus 13.96. So I get about 21.86. So my whole base is 21.86. So now I do area is equal to 1/2. My base is 21.86, about. My height is 11.49, about. So I do 1 ABC2 times 21.86 times 11.49. I end up with about 125.59. So area is about 125.59. Remember, it is square units. And we are done. That finishes that one.